Greetings, everyone. This is Rocco Spock coming at you with the weekly comic book roundup, and we're going to get started this week with our X-Men books and our X-Men book, our Avengers book, and our Star Wars book. So, kicking things off, we've got Powers of 10, number 4. So, where we left off. Okay, so in the 4 timelines, year 1, Xavier and Moira McTaggart had made an agreement with Magneto. Year 10, Xavier and Magneto had sent a strike team of X-Men to the Orcus Forge in orbit of the Sun to get rid of the Mother Mold. They succeeded, but at the cost of their lives. Year 100. The remaining mutants in the Sol system raided Nimrod's archive, Nimrod the Lesser's archive, stole data about when Nimrod first came online. Wolverine got it back to Moira, who was wearing a suit which allowed her to process information immediately, as long as it was on a data crystal, which was plunged into her chest, plunged into a receptacle on her chest, I should say. And then Wolverine killed her, ending her 9th life. And in year 1000, the librarian and her cohorts were met the Phalanx, who asked what they wanted. Apparently what they want is ascension. So, okay then. As both this and House of X, we open with a quote. I fear our needs will far outlast our desires. We have many hard choices ahead of us. This is attributed to Professor X. So, we open up. Year 1. Bar Sinister. Xavier and Magneto arrive at a crystalline island. They're stopped by a guard. The guard makes some snarky remarks about Magneto's cape. Xavier explains, however, that they need to see Nathaniel Essex. The guard removes his helmet and reveals himself to be Mr. Sinister, Nathaniel Essex. And he makes a point of asking which one. There are so many of us. Magneto clarifies with the one in charge. We have the first point of Magneto basically calling out Xavier on perceived weakness. And I kind of agree with him. So, a couple minutes later, the guard takes them to Sinister. And Sinister. The island is clones of Sinister. Okay. I absolutely love the way Sinister's written here, and I want Jonathan Hickman to write a Mr. Sinister book. Just about this island, where it's all different versions of Mr. Sinister. So, Magneto and Xavier are about to address him, and, well, Sinister, the one in charge, cuts them off and says, well, hold on. I want to make one thing perfectly clear. I love that cape. And he asks, why doesn't he have a cape? Why does he not have a cape? How does he not have a cape? And a an advisor, Sinister, is like, I've always thought you should wear one. I'm like, okay, so then why did you say it? So I'm like, it slipped my mind. And Sinister has the guard Sinisters kill Advisor Sinister. And so they then, Xavier and Magneto explain why. Well, hey, we think that we can help one another. We're aware of your effort, your endeavors in genetics. However, yeah, oh, negotiations are interesting, especially when another Sinister shows up, kills the Sinister they're talking to. Also, this is a Sinister who now is wearing a collared cape, though. It's the cape that, if you've ever seen Sinister in the animated series or one of the video games or toys, it's like that. Apparently, this Sinister has the mutant gene. His mutant power is overthrowing tyrants and being absolutely fabulous. But yeah, he agrees. So okay, yeah, the service are together, and so Xavier then says, responds, first you need to begin the good work, and then you need to forget why you're doing it and that we were ever here until the day I tell you to remember. We get the gossip pages from the page of the Red Diamond. Well, we get the Red Diamond. All the best news and gossip from Bar Sinister, which we'll go into that in detail on Monday. Next up, we're in the time frame of year 10, or of House of X, months ago. Xavier and Cypher arrive at Krakoa, and Xavier explains that the days of Krakoa being an adversary are long past. There was some effort put into it, but eventually Xavier was able to telepathically make a connection. And from that connection, the relationship between Mutant Island and Mutant Man has grown. The main thing, however, is that Charles wants Cypher to meet Krakoa. While Cypher walks through the jungle, he touches some of the plants, and it should be noted Cypher does have a transmode right arm, but he brushes some of the plants with his fingertips, which then pick up the transmode virus, the techno-organic virus from his arm. And so they talk. Keep in mind, Cypher's power is he can understand any language. This includes body language, I might add. And so Xavier and Krakoa talk a little bit, and Doug listens. Begins to pick up some of the little things of Krakoa. Then he touches Krakoa, and then he tells the tale. We were Okara, the one land. Basically, the splitting of Krakoa and another island, and the chasm between Krakoa and Arakko created creatures which were fought by the man who was not a man, the first mutant, the warrior god in blue, Apocalypse. who saved the world. And using his mighty powers, he stood in the gap and set his forge to sentinel the land and sealed the chasm that was created shut, never to be opened again. And then Xavier explains that he has plans, which he shows Doug. Presumably creating a language and a means of regularly communicating with the island. And Doug says he would need months, maybe a year, if he's terrible at it. And so he gets started. Then we get a breakdown of the Krakoan systems, transit and monitoring, defense observation, secondary and external systems, and overwatch and data analysis. As well as a brief explanation of the interface built by Doug Ramsey for the Krakoa interface. Now we jump to year 1000. The Phalanx are talking with the people of Earth. Well, explaining that they're ready for ascension. They hope for it. They're ready for conversion and hope for ascension. The Phalanx, however, care little for hope. And so there's a drone, which one of the Phalanx absorbs. Apparently, the drone has basically has the personality of the first of the elders imprinted on it. And it works. Somewhere, the first of the elders is now a part of the Phalanx. At least his intelligence is. We get an explanation of who the Phalanx are. Well, the addition that the Phalanx do find us useful. Well, mutants. But, and they start absorbing shows them trying to absorb some of the people, but the problem is that it doesn't really work for biological entities. And maybe the Phalanx find this acceptable. Anyway, so the issue then ends with a quote from Professor X. "I'm not afraid of what I've done, but I do fear what it will one day cost." And that's where the issue comes to its close. There's 4 more issues to go. Well, 2 more sheets of Powers of 10, 2 more sheets of House of X. Moving on to Captain Marvel number 10. So where we left off with Captain Marvel, first off, there's a new superhero in town, Star. Second, Carol Danvers' powers are being troublesome. And third, Dr. Minerva, longtime, we'll go with enemy. Not so much nemesis, but they're not exactly like two that'll go out for drinks together. But they will work together if need be. Antagonist, there we go. Longtime antagonist of Carol's has shown up and has asked for Carol's help in a project. After doing some investigating, Carol's learned that there's a weird thing in her chest. It seems like it came from one of the creatures she recently fought. And when she goes to Minerva's lab underneath Manhattan, with the intent of confronting Minerva for what she's done, she finds Minerva near death with "You're not as smart as you think you are" written on the wall of the lab in Minerva's blood. So, we open up. Carol takes Minerva to Stark Unlimited, figuring if anyone can help her, Tony Stark can. And yes, he can. And so Minerva explains everything that's been going on. The Kree are dying. And she hoped that maybe Carol would help her. But she knew she had to make sure Carol would. She had to basically make Carol vulnerable. So she revealed the truth of Carol's lineage and created Star. Well, okay, so Star was one of many people that Minerva modified. The idea being, infuse some humans with Kree DNA to make them into basically super soldiers. But she kept failing. But there was one success, but only partial. Part Kree, part human, but no powers. And powers had been promised. So she let loose one of the creatures whose blood had a Kree-engineered virus, which then infected Carol. And then it all clicks. Well, first off, it explained that what was found in Carol's chest has been broadcast. Has basically been, shall we say, broadcasting her powers. And then it clicks with Carol that Star has the receiver. So every time Star shows up, Carol's weakened. However, Star turned on Minerva because Minerva wanted to team up, basically went to Carol for help. So, Carol goes to Times Square, calls out Star. With kind of a, hey, I'm willing to talk. But, yeah, it becomes a fight. Though with Star siphoning off Carol's powers, it's kind of one-sided, at least at first. Then Carol grabs Star, flies her up into space, and has that moment of, hey, I know what I can do. And she basically reaches into her chest and pulls the implant out. And so the two of them crash into Times Square. And Carol explains that she did what she could, she needed to depower Star, and Star says, hey, that actually did work for a little bit. And then Star explains who she is. Ripley Ryan of Miss Magazine, who actually approached Carol about an interview way back in the first issue of the series. And so, turns out though, Carol wasn't the only one with the implant, or wasn't the only one infected. Star has managed to infect the entire city. And so she manages to basically repower herself off of regular people. And that is where the issue comes to its close. And moving on to the last book for this video, Star Wars: Age of Resistance, Supreme Leader Snoke. So I'm just gonna say, I really didn't like. I didn't mind the whole concept of Kylo Ren turning on Snoke. Okay, all right. What I really didn't like was basically Snoke getting built up as much in Force Awakens, and then just getting killed off in Last Jedi with very little explanations about it. I thought that was kind of shitty. I would not be surprised either if it was a case of a lack of unified vision when it came to episodes 7 and 8. So, we begin with, in the Rarlek system, Snoke is holding his apprentice, Kylo Ren, over a chasm with the Force, asking if he's afraid. Kylo claims not to be, though everything else begs to differ, and including Snoke himself. Then Snoke drops Kylo, who manages to stop his fall before he lands in the what would have been a fatal landing. Kylo then asks if Snoke would have caught him if he hadn't caught himself. Though Snoke explains that while Luke Skywalker would, or that Luke Skywalker would have done so, and held him, and that would have held back Kylo Ren. But Snoke needs more than that from Ren, more than what he currently is from Ren. He needs Ren to find his true potential. So they head off into space. They arrive at a system As they're leaving, the shuttle, Snoke tells Kylo Ren to leave his mask, as the place where they are is not somewhere he can hide behind a mask. He cannot pretend to be Vader in this place. Where are they, you might ask? They're on Dagobah. And so, Snoke sends Kylo Ren into the dark side cave from Empire. The cave where Luke fought the apparition of Vader in Empire Strikes Back. What Kylo Ren sees is an apparition of Luke. So the two fight. And then Kylo strikes him down. Turns off his lightsaber and says he's done. But Snoke knows there's more to it than just Luke. This encounter is far from over. And Ben's parents then show up, calling him Ben Solo, even when he tells that's not his name. That he's his son. They love him. And Snoke is narrating from outside the cave, telling Kylo Ren to snuff out his connection to the light side. He blows out a massive portion of the ground that he was underneath. There's a show of power. He basically destroys the cave. Snoke explains that he had hoped to bring other apprentices to there. As they leave, Kylo says that Snoke won't need other apprentices. As Snoke smiles. And that's where the issue comes to its end. Alright, that's it for this portion of the roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off saying, live long and rock hard.